Howdy. Do you guys hear me? Let's see. Chat. Questions.
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Uh, let's see. There should be a Q&A tab here. Good. All right, we got about 4 minutes. We'll let people show up here. Do you guys have any questions for me while we're waiting?
No, not really. I have some questions once we get into it, I guess.
Okay, certainly. So what I'm going to be doing today is just basically just starting creating a new Rails application, showing you a couple of the gems I like to start with, and I'll just be going through that. And you can see my screen, yeah?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Great. So uh, I'll just be showing you that, and as you have questions, you should be able to submit them through the Q&A panel. All right, let's get started. So my name is Gabriel Gillette, and I've been in 2008. I graduated from UMass Amherst with a degree in electrical engineering, actually. But I decided I wanted to go into websites, so my friend suggested I learn Ruby on Rails, and I ended up getting some tutorials from lynda.com and going through those until I was comfortable making a website from scratch, at which point I was hired by a web design firm to do some development for them. And then for the past 6 years or so, 6 or 7 years, my whole career has been Ruby on Rails. So I'm self-taught and just learning on the job as much as I can. So I'm just going to go through what my process looks like when I start a new Ruby on Rails project. And so feel free to submit questions into the QA section. as I go. And this might take maybe about half an hour to set up this whole starter site. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the site, and I'm going to include a few gems. And the gems are going to allow us to have a fully operational user login system, so users can log in and log out, and we can track activity based on a user. We're also going to create a CSS framework, which will give us a whole array of preset styles for our website, so it can look good coming right out of the gate. And then we're also going to install a gem that will give us a pre-built admin panel so that we can log in as an administrator on our site and control all the different kinds of resources that we use, including the users that we'll be creating. So if you can see my terminal window here, whenever you start a new Rails project, the first thing you want to do is run Rails. Well, first of all, let's do a gem list Rails. This will show us what version of Rails we're running, and you can see we have Rails 4.2.0, which is the latest version, so that's good. So we're going to use that, and we're going to say Rails new Codementor. This is going to create a brand new directory for us and all of the different parts of a Rails project. So now that that's done, we can change directory into our new Codementor directory. Now this is our project. Now I use TextMate to work on my Rails project, so I'm just going to say mate period, which will open the current directory. And so you'll see, let's see, is that open? Here it is. Where is our drawer? No. Drawer. No. Sorry. Let's try that again. There we go. So here's our full project right here, everything listed out. Now the first thing that I like to do when I'm doing a Rails project is set up a gemset and a default Ruby version. So if you're not familiar with gemsets, there's something called Ruby Version Manager, which allows you to have whatever version of Ruby that you want. So you may notice that Ruby versions are constantly changing. And so there's this great tool, RVM, which allows you to manage all the different versions of Ruby. So you can see on my machine, if I run RVM list, it's going to list out all of the different versions of Ruby I have running, or I have available installed on my machine, and I can switch between them using this RVM tool. So what gemsets do is in Ruby, plugins or modules can be included in your projects, and they're often packaged up and they're called quote-unquote gems. So sometimes you want to keep the gems for a specific project in its own space so it's not mixed in with all of your other gems. So that's the purpose of a gem set. So let's see, am I still in? What happened here? In its own space, so it's not mixed in with all of your other gems. So that's the purpose of a gem set. Oh, here we go. Okay, I'm sorry. I got a little confused on where I was broadcasting. Okay, I'm back with you guys. All right, so we're in our Codementor project, and so we got to create a couple files so that when we change into this directory, it will use our proper gemset. So I'm going to use the echo command, which comes from our Mac OS and our Unix command. I'm going to echo my Ruby version, which is going to be 2.2.0. That's the latest version of Ruby. I want to echo that into a file called .rubyversion. So what that did is it just printed this and created a new file, and it printed it into this new file. So if I list out all the files in my directory, you can now see that I have this Ruby version, and if I do cat.rubyversion, you can see it's 2.2.0. So I'm going to do the same thing. Now I want to declare a specific, I have a Ruby version, now I want to also declare the gemset. So I'm going to say echo Codementor, that's going to be the name of my gemset, into .ruby gemset. Now if I list again, you can see I've got this gemset file, and if I Ruby gemset, you can see it's set to Codementor. That's great. So currently now, if I were to say RVM gemset directory, we can see that we're in this gemset, which is Ruby 2.2.0 in the Codementor gemset. Now, since I created those files, if I were to go back out to my sites directory and say RVM gemset dir, I'm still on there. So if I said RVM gemset use default, this would now be using the default gemset. RVM gemset dir, you can see that it's now using the default gemset. It's not using our Codementor gemset. So now if I change directory back into Codementor app and do RVM gemset dir, you can see it's now switched automatically because it found those two hidden Ruby version Ruby gemset files. So that's about it for setting up your Ruby version and your gem file, or I'm sorry, your gemset. Now you will also have to install Ruby version manager, which you can do here. Okay, so now the first thing I like to do in my app is add the bootstrap gem. So if we come over here and we look for bootstrap-sass, we can find the bootstrap-sass gem. Now if you're not familiar with Bootstrap, you can go to getbootstrap.com, and it explains everything about Twitter Bootstrap that helps you do all the CSS that you would need. You can see there's a whole slew of different kinds of objects. They give you this whole collection of images you can use. They give you drop-down menus, all pre-styled for you, all of these kinds of things. So that's why I like to use Bootstrap. There are other ones, such as Foundation, but I like Bootstrap, and so I like to use that one. So Bootstrap is actually built using a technology called less, but it's also been ported to Sass, and since Ruby on Rails uses Sass by default, I'm going to use the bootstrap-sass gem. So this is going to give us all the information we need to install Twitter Bootstrap. So the first thing we have to do is install this in our gem file. So I'll paste that there, come back to my project, and I will run bundle install. There we go. Now we've got Bootstrap installed. Next thing we're going to have to do is import all of the Bootstrap files, in our application sass file. So we copy these 2 lines of code, come into style sheets, and paste those in. Now, one thing you'll notice is it tells us that tells us a couple things. We have to remove these requires because these requires are using something called sprockets, and that's not supported in Sass. If we want all of our different Sass variables to be included in all of our other CSS files, then we have to include them using Sass instead of sprockets. So we're going to go ahead and remove all of this. And what that's going to do is normally any file in this style sheets directory would be included, but now only the specific files we tell it to include will be included. And they'll also have access to all of our Sass variables that we include. Okay, so that's all set. One other thing we're going to have to do is, since this is now a Sass file, we're going to have to give it a Sass extension. We just call it SCSS instead of CSS. The other thing we're going to have to do is Bootstrap also gives us a bunch of JavaScript helpers. So we can come into application here, and we've already got jQuery included at the top here. So we'll just include Bootstrap sprockets, and we should be good to go. Now, if I come into my project here and I start my server, Spring Rails server, and I come to localhost. Okay, this is our default Rails index page. So if we want to get rid of that, we'll have to set our root in our routes file. And you can see they give us an example right here, welcome index. I like to call this my home controller. So I'm just going to change that to home. And so then we're going to have to create that controller. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say Spring Rails generate controller, and we're going to call it the home controller, and we'll create an index action. There we go. And there we can see that our controller was created successfully. So now if we refresh this page, you should see it loading up here. And there we go. And now it's loaded up with no style at all, right? Just plain nothing, because we haven't actually included any of the Bootstrap classes that are included. So if we want to throw this into a Bootstrap template, we can come over to the Get Bootstrap page. We can go to Get Started, and they give us a number of pre-built templates that we can use that are very nice. So if you just scroll to the bottom here, you can see there are all these. There's a simple one, all these different things you can use. I like this one down here. It's got a sticky footer and a nav bar. I kind of like that, so I'm going to load this one in. So this is what we want our layout to look out like. So I'm going to look at the source here and just copy all of this markup. We don't need the JavaScript because that's going to be included through our Rails helpers. Come in here and throw this into our layout file, application HTML. And so we can see there's no template here, so I'm just going to paste in our new template. And so this is our nav bar. That's good. That should be in the layout file. And then this is our container. And then this is all of the content we want on our page, right? So I'm going to replace this content with our yield statement. So that will yield whatever current template we're looking at. Okay? And now we've got our style sheet, our application style sheet loaded here, which will include the Bootstrap styles. And we've got our application JavaScript, which will include the Bootstrap JavaScript. So now that that's saved.
Oh, could you slow down just a little bit? I wasn't just a little bit. I'm trying to follow along with you.
Sure. Am I speaking too fast?
You're just going a little fast. I was trying to follow along. I'm stuck at trying to get Bootstrap right now. 1 second.
Okay.
Where did you find the template at exactly?
So if you go to getbootstrap.com and you click on Getting Started,
Okay, I see.
then you can scroll to the bottom and you can find any of the templates here, and you can copy any of those templates.
Okay, I just want to follow along with it. Which was the one that you used?
So I used the sticky footer with nav bar here.
Okay, perfect. All right, and you put that.
So if you view the source code,
okay.
After you click on it, it opens up, and then you can right-click and say View Page Source.
Perfect.
Then I copied almost everything inside of the body tag.
Oh, I see. Okay. Perfect.
All right, all the way to the footer. I didn't include any of this JavaScript because that's included in the head of our document.
Okay.
So just to the footer.
Perfect. Okay. And then you went to your layout file?
Then we opened up our layout file, and we just pasted all of that into the body of our layout file.
Do you delete the yield?
I deleted the yield, and I replaced the yield here in the container.
Okay. Okay, I think I'm all caught up now.
All right, great. So now if we come back to Codementor and we refresh the page, we can see it almost works. We've got our nav bar up here. Our drop-down works. That's good. But we can see our code is a little cut off here, and there's no sticky footer. Now, the reason for that is because there's actually, they have a little bit of custom CSS in this template. So we can come right here and we can find this sticky footer navbar.css. That's where the custom CSS is going to be. So if we click on that, it opens up the CSS file. Now we can copy this. We'll come into our style sheets and we'll create a new file. We'll call it layout.scss. And we'll paste all of that layout JavaScript styling in there. So then the other thing we're going to want to do is we want to include that layout file. So we're going to say import layout, and now that should be included. So if we come back to our site here, it's a little janky, refresh. Perfect. Now everything is in the right position. We've got our sticky footer down here. So that is the crux of getting Bootstrap installed. We've got it installed, we've got a template, we're using the nav, everything looks good. And now we have access to all of these great different components. You know, we can use the breadcrumbs. We've got these styles available to us, labels, pagination, all these kind of styles already ready to go for us. We just have to apply the classes that they specify. Okay, so now moving forward, let's see here. We've got Bootstrap installed. Now I want to introduce you to the devise gem. So devise is a gem that's going to help us manage user authentication. If I just do a search for devise gem, you see it's our first hit here in GitHub. And there are all of these different kinds of modules that it includes. We're just going to use the defaults, but one of them that's not by default is confirmable. You can include that. That will send an email for email confirmation before a user account is activated. So I'm going to skip right to starting with Rails. This is exactly what we want. And so the first thing is to add devise to our gem file. I'm going to come to the gem file. I'm going to say devise. Over here, stop our server. I'm going to run bundle install. There we go. We've got devise installed. Next, we have to actually run this generator in order to install devise properly. So I'm going to run Rails generate devise install. Excellent. So that created an initializer for devise. It also created a locale. So if we want to change any of the default naming conventions, we can do that in our locale. And if we want to do certain configurations of devise, we can do that in our initializer. Now it also gives us some helpful information here about how to set up devise for our project. So the first thing is it tells us we have to configure an action mailer default URL. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this, and that should go into our development. So devise is set up to be able to send a number of emails for us, such as the confirmation email, or in our case, we can use the forgot password. It will send an email for that. So we'll come to our project here and open up development RB configurations, and we can add our devise configuration right here. Save that. That's good. Ensure you have your route set up. We already did that when we created our home controller, so that's all set. Now we want these alerts to be visible, so when certain things happen, the user will get notified on the website. So we'll come to our application layout file, and we'll throw those right above the yield. There. Good. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to include a couple bootstrap classes. So this will be an example of how we can use Twitter Bootstrap. So those are going to be alerts. So I'll come down to the alert section of Twitter Bootstrap, and we can see we have all these different styles for alerts. We can do alert success, alert info, warning, danger. So I'll use these classes, alert info, for our notice, right? And then for our alert, I'll use warning, alert warning. We've already got the alert class there. We can just say warning. Save that. So that will make the alerts look nice, just like in Twitter Bootstrap. If you're deploying to Heroku, we don't need to worry about that. We're not doing any deploying in this tutorial. And then you can copy devise views for customization to your app running. Okay, so let's go ahead and generate the views. Now, there's one thing I want to do before we generate the views. So now we're going to generate our model. So this is the model that we're going to use to have our users log in and log out. So we're going to call that model, the standard is just to call them a user. And so we do Rails generate devise. You can see that it created a user model for us. It also created a migration to create that user. So if you want to look at that migration real quick, create devise, create users. You can see that we've got an email. These are the attributes that the user will have. We have an email, we have an encrypted password, we have these tokens for resetting the user, we have a timestamp for remembering the user's login credentials. We've got a bunch of other things here. So if we want to include these other modules, we would uncomment these sections. If we wanted to include lockable, we would uncomment that as well, and then also uncomment the indexes. But we're just going to use the defaults for now. So now that we've created our user, we can migrate the database. Rake db migrate. We've already configured our URL options. Now further down here, we can see that generating the views. You can just generate general views, or we can generate scoped views. So I prefer to keep the views scoped just in case I want to use a different devise model other than users. Say I have users and then I also have monitors, and I want those views to be separate, then we scope them. So I'm going to do that here with users. So this is going to generate all of the view files that we'll see using devise. So we refresh our page. Well, first we got to start our server. Spring Rails server. And once that's up, we can refresh. Now we see here there's these two kind of empty alert boxes, and we don't want those. So where those are coming from is we've put these two alert boxes in here, but we don't actually want those to show up unless there is an actual alert. So what we'll do here is we'll say if notice.present. So if it exists and it's not a blank string, then we'll show that. And if alert.present, then we'll show that. So now if we come back here, restart our page, we can see that those are gone, but they will show up if an alert is present. So the next thing we want to do is, now that we have devise set up and we have our user model, we want to be able to log in, but there's no links to log in. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use add some more to this nav bar. I'm going to create a UL with a class of nav bar right, and what that's going to do is it's going to slide this UL all the way to the right of the nav bar. So that's something that we get from Twitter Bootstrap. And in here, I'm going to say, I'm going to add an LI, and in here I'm going to say link to sign in, and the path is going to be new user session path. So the reason I know that is because devise created a whole bunch of routes for us, and if I say spring break routes grep, so grep is a Unix command, and that will limit the results of rake routes to only the things that match the string following grep. So I'm going to say match everything that says devise. This gives us all our devise routes, and you can see if we wanted to go and create a new session, we would use the new user session route, which is what we did. New user session path. Great. So if I refresh the page, it says, well, that style's not right, so what have we done wrong here? Navbar nav. Class navbar right. I think that should work. Well, let's go to Twitter Bootstrap and let's see what I'm missing here. So we go to navbars, come down here, and we can see that this navbar is justified right. So let's see what they did here. So they called it navbar right. So those are all of the classes they gave it. So if I come back here and I give it all of those classes, now it should be working. Refresh, and there we go. Now we can click sign in. Now we actually haven't created a user account yet. So what we want to do is sign up. So this will bring us to the sign up page. Now these views are all customizable in those devise views that we generated. So if you come down to your views and you go to users, you can see that in here we have all of the different layouts. So registration's new, that's what we're looking at right now. These are all the styles. So if I wanted to use Twitter Bootstrap, for example, Twitter Bootstrap gives us a 12 grid system. I can show this to you real quick. This is a nice way to sort of organize your page if you want things next to each other or something like that. So if we come to CSS, we can see there's a grid system here, and it shows us how this works. So it basically splits the page up into 12 columns, and these are all the different classes, each that go within a row, to determine how wide you want your div to be in that column. So you see you put it inside of a row class, and then you tell it how wide it is. So these are going to be 12 columns, each with a width of 1. So if we want to do that in our sign up page, I could say div class equals row, div class equals call small 4, call small offset 4. And so what that will do is it will take this column of 4 and it will offset it by 4, so it'll move it to this section, which is 4 slots over. And this small here, that indicates that we want, so Bootstrap is designed to be responsive for smaller devices, and there are a number of different sizes that we can have it degrade at. So we want it to maintain this center 4 column until it gets to a small device. There's also extra small devices or large devices. We're going to go with small. So if I grab all of this content here and drop it into our grid system, hit save, refresh, that did not seem to work. This is registrations new. Call small 4, call small offset 4. Not sure why that didn't work, but I would like to continue going. Maybe we can come back to this. Oh, I do know why it didn't work. Okay, so we've used these scoped views. Now, if you want to use scoped views, you have to actually configure that in the devise initializer. So we're going to go to devise, our devise initializer here, and we're going to find scoped views. We're just going to uncomment that line, and it's set to false. We want to set it to true. We are using scoped views. So I'm going to restart our server. That started up, and now I'll refresh this page. And now you can see that it's using our new template in users. Great. And now it's been shifted over by that call for offset 4. Excellent. Now, it would be nice, though, if when we were on our home screen, if we had just a button up here to register, if it wasn't just sign in, but we had both. So let's go to our application layout, and let's just add, there's sign in, and there's also li link to register. And here I can say new user registration path. I refresh the page. Now we have a register. I'm going to click register. I'm going to go ahead and create my email address, my user account. Gmail. Set my password. I'm going to click sign up. And there we go. And here's our alert. It says, welcome, you have signed up successfully. Wonderful. So now we have a fully operational user interface, so we can create user accounts and sign in, sign out. Now we probably want to hide these two links if we're already logged in. So we're going to come down here and we're going to use our devise helper that is given to us, and we're going to say if user signed in, then we want to do one thing. If they're not signed in, then we want to display these sign in and register links. Now, if they are signed in, we want to give them a link to sign out. So I'll say list item, link to sign out, and I'm going to say, let's look at our routes again. I believe it's destroy user session, okay? Destroy user session path, and you can see here that it's a delete method. It needs a delete request, so we have to set our HTTP method to delete in order for that to work. Great. I can refresh here. I'm logged in, so it says sign out. You know what? We can add another signed in as, and I'm going to say we're going to use our current user helper. That's also from devise. We can say .email, because remember that it added an email address for our user. So say signed in. We'll put this inside of an anchor tag because the bootstrap styles require that it's inside, that the style is attached to the anchor tag. So I'm just going to do that. Even though it's not clickable, we just get the style for free. Signed in as Gabe Odess. And now we can sign out. Signed out successfully. And now we wanted to sign in again. We could come into the sign-in form. Now, if say we forgot our password, we've got this handy already configured forgot password feature. So I can just say, well, let's say I say gabeodess@gmail.com. So let's say I put my email in wrong and I hit send instructions. We get an error notification. Email was not found. Okay. So if I fix it, send reset password instructions, you can see that it actually tried to send an email. In development, it doesn't actually send the email, but we can see in our logs that it sent this email, hello gabeodess@gmail.com, someone requested a link to change your password. Now it also gave us this link here. So if I just copy this from my logs, paste it in here, and you can see that there's this reset password token that it created. So not anybody can just come and reset my password, but I have to receive this in the email. I can type in my new password. Change password. There we go. I'm logged in. And so that's pretty powerful. That devise gave us all that, and we had very little configuration. So that's the crux of devise. Did you all have any questions about devise before I move on?
No, what did you say devise invitable did again?
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
What did you say devise invitable did again?
I'm not getting the last part of your question.
Devise invitable. You said that you could add that in for extra functionality. What does that exactly do?
The confirmable feature?
Yeah, confirmable.
Okay, so right. So if you want to come to the devise documentation, right up here, you can read about all of these different features. So confirmable will send an email with confirmation instruction and verifies whether an account is already confirmed during sign-in. So basically what that would do for us is if we sign up, if we register, when we register, it won't actually log us in. Instead, it will tell us to check our email, and then when we sign in, and then when we check our email, we'll get a confirmation link. We click the confirmation link. That will confirm our account, and then we can sign in. So that's the functionality of the confirmable. And you can read about all these different items. If you click on confirmable, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of explanation of how it works. But we're not going to cover that here. But that's just a short overview of what it is.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so if there's no other questions, we'll move on to the next gem, which I like to use, which is called Active Admin. This is going to create an admin interface for us. So I'm going to go to Active Admin, load up the documentation here. Here we go. Active Admin is Ruby on Rails framework. Okay. State of the project. We are currently working on 1.0.0, which as far as dependencies moves us from metasearch to ransack. That's internal features, and adds Rails 4 support. Okay, so this is important. We do need Rails 4 support because we're running on Rails 4.2.0. So if you can get Rails 4.x support by tracking master. So we're going to have to add this line instead of just saying gem active admin, we have to track master here. So I'm going to copy that, go to our gem file, paste that in, stop our server, and we're going to say bundle install. Alright, now that's installed. Come down here, it tells us that the documentation for the latest docs, check out GitHub. Alright, so click here, we'll look at installation. So we've already done gem active admin. Now we want to Rails generate active admin install. I'm going to paste that in. Did we run our... It's not yet checked out. Run bundle install. That's interesting. Bundle install. Did we put that in our gem file properly? GitHub, save. Bundle install. Okay. So that's created active admin for us. I'm not sure what that error was about, but it looks like it created all the files. Okay. This generator adds these core files. That's good. So it's going to give us some JavaScript for active admin. It's going to give us some default styling. It's going to give us a configuration file and initializers, and it will give us a dashboard. Now migrate your database and start the server. So rake db migrate. And now we can go ahead and do Spring Rails server. So as a default user, they've created a default admin user for us with admin and example, admin at example.com and password as the password. So if we come to our site now and we go to /admin, and or sign up. That's interesting. Connection reset by Peter. For some reason, it doesn't want to load. Let's try restarting our server. Bundle install. Let's see if that works. Okay. Now, Rails server. Huh. That is strange. I'm going to try running this install again and see what happens. Active on Git Manager is not yet checked out. Run bundle install first. Did this create the... and it did not create our active admin CSS. Active. Sorry for the delay here. Active admin. Um, update. Active admin again. This is really putting a wrench in my process here. Well, it should still function. However, Rails server, we're not going to get any of the styles, which is a shame. Pending migrations. Control-C, rake db migrate. I'm having some trouble here. Add devise. I think we probably have some duplicates in here, so I'm just gonna look real quick. Migrate. Okay. Add devise to admin users. Create active admin comments. Create users. Create admin users. And admin users. I think I should remove this file in the trash. Rails server. I log in here. Okay, so we don't have any styles, unfortunately. I'm not sure what the problem is. Maybe I'll be able to figure this out off the air and post the results in a comment. But we still have the functionality here. So we have our dashboard. We have our list of admin users. Oh, this is just terrible. I think it might be best to go to Q&A at this point because this doesn't seem to be working. Unfortunately, I just went through the whole process prior today and it worked fine, so I'm not sure what the issue is. So, Christopher, if there's anything you have questions about.
No, not really, actually. I was just going through it, and it worked fine for me, so it must be something locally on your system.
Oh, it did work for you?
Yeah, it worked for me fine.
Okay, so it's coming up with all the styles. Is that what you're saying?
The styles were coming up.
Okay.
Yeah, the styles are fine. So.
All right. Well, then I'll just keep going then if it's working for you. And it should make sense then. So we went into /admin. And so you can see that you have all of your admin users listed out here. And you can create new ones or edit the current one, change the password, whatever you like. So now what we also would want to do is we would want to manage our regular users, right? And so in order to do that, we come back to our terminal, and active admin gives us this generator, Rails generate active admin resource, and then we're going to give it the model name, which is, in our case, user. We're going to generate that, and you can see that this creates in the admin folder a user RB file where we can configure how we want admin to render our user information. So if I refresh this page, you can see now that it's added this users link in the main nav. So if I click on that, I now see that Gabe Odess, this is the user account that I created earlier, and now I can edit it or I can update it, I can delete it, I can view the details. It shows me all the details, and I can add comments in the admin section that will only show up to administrators. And I can edit the user if I want. Now, in here, there are a number of fields that we probably don't want to edit. We probably only care about editing the email and the password. So in order to do that, we're going to come back and we're going to open up in that admin folder that was just created. We just created this user file. So what we're going to do here is say form do f, and we're going to say f.inputs. This inputs block just makes it a little prettier, and then we say f.input email, f.input password. And now that will replace this big messy form with just those two fields. So if I refresh the page now, you can see it's just those two fields, which is good. We forgot to add the submit buttons, so we'll say f.actions, and now we've got the submit fields, and now we can update our user and change their email address or whatever we like to do. And so that gives us a fully functional administrative panel, which is really powerful and really nice to get things up and running quick. Now, in one thing, this form isn't going to work as is because because in Rails 4 we have strong parameters. So we actually have to explicitly state which parameters we want to allow to be accessed. So we're going to say we want to be able to change the email and the password. Those are the two fields that we're showing. And so if we wanted to add any other fields, like say we did f.input name, then we would also want to add name up here. So that's how that works. Now it would be nice if I could click on Codementor here and it would bring me back to the public site. And we can do that. We just got to come in to our initializers file, config initializers active admin, and you can see here this is the site title, which we can also change, and we can do site title link is a configuration option. So we just uncomment that, refresh the page. Oh, it's an initializer, so we actually have to restart our server. While that's going, we can refresh the page. And now we can see that it's a link, and that will bring us back to our public page. Now, I'm on my public page, I can sign in or register as normal. But it would also be nice if I could go back to admin. If I'm already logged in, if I could go back to admin. So I'm going to go to our application layout. Where is that? Application HTML. I'm just going to add another link in here. I'm going to say if admin now active admin uses devise. So just like we got this user signed in helper from devise, active admin created a record called admin user, and so we can now use admin user signed in. So we can use that helper, that devise helper, with active admin. So if they're signed in, we can link to admin, and that will be the admin root path. Save that, refresh the page, and we can see we are logged into admin. So if we click that, it brings us back to our admin panel. And then if we log out of admin, and then go back to our public page, you can see the admin link has disappeared up here. And so the user login and the admin login are completely isolated. So you can be logged in as a user and logged in as an admin, or logged in just as a user or logged in just as an admin. They don't affect each other. So that's the crux of it. A couple other points I would like to make is that some common tools for making websites is, for example, pagination. So an old but popular one is called Will Paginate. You can see this hasn't been updated since June, so I don't love to use plugins that aren't recently updated, but this is a popular one. However, active admin uses something called Aminari, which does essentially the same thing. This is also a pagination gem. So if you are looking for a pagination gem, I would recommend, since if you're using active admin, you already have Cominari installed because it's a dependency, so I would recommend just using what's already installed in your system rather than adding more plugins than you need. So that's what I've got today for the the office hours. That took us about an hour, and we were able to get a full CSS framework installed and integrated into our site, a full user login experience set up on our site, as well as an administrative panel, good and ready to go. So that's pretty powerful, and it was slowed down a bit by all the explanation. So I've done this just by myself in about half an hour, and that's a lot of functionality to be able to pack into half an hour to get a site up and running. So it's pretty impressive. So that's it for me. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to field any of your questions.
Yeah, just actually I had two. Are you going to push this code up to GitHub, and is this recording going to be posted somewhere? So if we want to come back and check it out later, we can as well.
You know what? I'm not sure. The people at Codementor asked me to record it, but I didn't see any options for recording it. So I'm not sure if it's recorded automatically or not. I can certainly post the code to be available, either on GitHub or on the Codementor website. I'm not sure how they handle that.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
you can actually you can feel free to email me if you have questions.
Okay.
My email address is gabeodess@gmail.com.
Okay.
So we'll try and get this up, and if you're not able to find it, just shoot me an email, and I can get it to you. I can get at least the code base to you.
Okay. Perfect. Perfect. I don't want to hog all the questions. I know Dylan's on the line too, but I want to know, besides this, what else do you kind of do when you first start a project? Just, I mean, you don't have to go technically into it, but just like in your head, what else do you usually do? Gems, or maybe certain things that you just add to your, to your code. What do you do?
What? I'm sorry. Could you?
I said, besides this, what are some? You don't have to get technical, but besides this, what are some other things that you typically start or you do when you start a new Rails project?
When I start a new project,
Yeah.
well, usually I will create it. I'll put it in a Git repository. So I didn't show you putting it into a Git repository, and then either I'll store it on GitHub, or if we don't want to, so GitHub, if we want to keep it private, but we don't want to pay for a private GitHub repository, I may just go directly to Heroku. I host most of my projects on Heroku, so that's, I mean, this is most of the basics. This applies to almost every project that I do, and then after this, it's specific to the project. Yeah, just specific on what the requirements of the project are, on what I'll use. I'll usually use Paperclip if I need file attachments or image uploads. I'll use Paperclip, and I'll set up a Paperclip is another gem. Paperclip gem. A Thoughtbot, so you can read through their docs and see what that's all about. And then I integrate on Heroku. You have to integrate that with Amazon, so I'll have to set up an Amazon S3 account and provide the credentials for image uploads there. But yeah, off the top of my head, that's pretty much what I do. If I'm doing an e-commerce site, I've been using Stripe lately. Stripe has been a great solution for a custom e-commerce platform. They've got great documentation about how all of their different, let's see here, full API reference about how, yeah, all of their different models work, and they've got, everything in Ruby. They've got a proper Ruby gem to help you manage all of that. So that's great for e-commerce. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, sure. And Dylan, I don't know if you had any questions or if you're muted or if I can hear you, but you're free to ask some questions. I'm at work. Very good. Sure. Do you have any questions? Oh, here we go. Can you slow down just a bit? Okay. Well, that's a take. Outputting. Okay. I haven't. Active Admin is the only admin panel, honestly, that I've ever used. So I'm not familiar with Rails admin. We could take a quick look here. Rails admin gem. But usually there's a number of solutions to any given problem, and my guess, authentication via devise, authorization versus can, user action history with paper trail. These are all great gems that it's using here. It's got export data to CSV, JSON, and XML. So, I mean, these features are exactly the same. Search and filtering is the same. Automatic form validation, custom actions, CRUD. I mean, they look like they're more or less they perform the same thing. So, my guess is neither one is better than the other. If you're already familiar with Rails admin, I'd go for that. If you want to try something new, you could try Active Admin, but I think they both will likely perform all the same actions. All right. Either of you guys have any more questions?
No, I think that's it. I'll just look for the posting of the code, and hopefully if it's recorded, I'll check it out again. But if not, it's all good too.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Okay.